Chapter 21, Taming the Bet. Ren straightened in his seat. This was his opportunity. His classmate's beetle was perfect, a beast common enough that everyone knew its supposed limit, but with hidden potential that could manifest quickly with the correct method. If he could demonstrate visible results in a few months, he would have more than enough time to achieve it within the semester. Of course, he murmured to himself. First, I'd have to convince the owner to try it. And that was the real challenge. Who would trust a boy with the useless spore? Who would risk their beast cultivation, following the rotting boy advice? Still, did he have another choice? That's not true. Ren stood up. The digger beetle can reach silver rank 3 like any other beast. Laughter erupted. Wei looked at him as if he were a particularly annoying fly. First he questions established methods, and now he contradicts historical records. Another 5 points less, Mr. Patender. The records you mentioned about beetle cultivation, Ren continued, ignoring the laughter, only have one error: the timing of processing. If we process the crystals following the correct specific method. More theories about strange specific timings? The exceptions to such ridiculous theories have never been successfully replicated. Wei smiled disdainfully. According to your expert opinion, what would happen if we follow the documented method but change only that detail? The beetle won't evolve into a greater excavator at bronze, as your texts say. It will become a living tunnel instead. Silence fell in the classroom. Taro looked at Ren with hope and confusion. A very specific prediction. Wei leaned forward. What if we put it to the test? If you're so sure, let's make a real bet. If you're right, I'll give you 1 bronze rank material, whatever you want regardless of cost, and 100 points for my teaching unit in my 2 classes. To give you even more time for your wonderful demonstration, don't even bother coming anymore. Since you're so knowledgeable, you won't need my advice in class. You'll thus be able to pass the other classes more easily and obtain bronze 1 support instead of iron, assuming you pass the exams of all 5 units a course. But if you're wrong, he smiled maliciously, if you don't demonstrate the exact beetle species you predicted, I get your full tuition and you lose all school support. Professor, Taro intervened, my beetle, it's your decision, of course, Wei continued. But I warn you, following Mr. Patender's theories, if they stray too far from the common method, only guarantees your beast will end up at mature iron rank. Are you willing to risk your progress for the fantasies of someone who can't even evolve his own spore? Ren looked at Taro, seeing the conflict in his eyes. It was a lot to ask, risking his beast's future on the word of a roommate he barely knew. Don't worry, Taro. We'll follow exactly the documented method, changing only 1 specific moment of processing. It will be at night, as the professor's literature says. Taro thought for a moment and then nodded. There was no turning back now. I accept the bet, Ren said firmly. If the beetle evolves into anything other than a living tunnel, you win. Wei studied Ren for a moment, as if evaluating whether the boy was really as foolish as he seemed. Deal. As they left the classroom, the Tiger Boys group's laughter echoed through the hallway. Hey, rotting boy, one of them shouted. Are you practicing begging already? You'll need it when you lose your tuition. Taro waited until they were gone before turning to run. Hey, he said quietly. I know you were trying to help, but I think this joke went too far. You should talk to Professor Wei and apologize. Maybe if you explain you were just... It wasn't a joke, Ren interrupted, the mushrooms in his hair pulsing softly. I can help you have a better life, Taro. Your beetle has real potential. Look, I appreciate you trying to cheer me up, but my mother got me the books as soon as I invoked this thing. Taro shook his head. The records are clear. In 500 years, no digger beetle has surpassed bronze rank. And now, because of me, you could lose everything. We're only going to change one thing, Ren insisted. The rest will be exactly like the documented method. There's not as much risk for me as you think. I have an ace up my sleeve. There's no risk for you. Just play along, okay? Taro hesitated. He had already bought 100 crystals and hadn't yet mixed them with the night essence, waiting to gather the 150 he would need for the complete method. Though I'm lucky it's not a full 180-day method, it's still expensive, he muttered, more to himself than to Ron. And getting 150 crystals is already quite expensive. Those extra 50 crystals will be hard to get within the school. The 100 you have will be more than enough, Rin smiled. We just need to wait for a specific night that's coming in a few days. Taro looked at Rin for a long moment. The mushrooms in his hair glowed with a steady light, as if reflecting the certainty in his words. You know what? Taro finally smiled. I hadn't started the mixture with the night essence anyway. I was waiting to have all the crystals to do it at once. He shrugged. I guess I won't lose anything by trying. If you're wrong, I'll still have time to get the other 50 crystals. After using 100 for 100 days, I'm sure I'll have a rest ready just in case. You won't need them, Rin smiled. I promise. As they walked to their next class, Rin couldn't help but notice how the mushrooms in his hair pulsed more strongly near certain walls. The ruins beneath the academy were calling, but that would have to wait. First, he had to prove that the rotting boy knew exactly what he was talking about. Chapter 22, Taming Battle. You won't need them, Rin smiled. I promise. With the 100 crystals you have, it will be more than enough if we overcharge them. The error in extra 50 days is in the reduced amount of mana in the night crystal. The beetle adapts to the error late, 50 days late. Though I understand why they don't use larger crystals. Mana poisoning is scary, but I hope you'll let me slightly increase the amount, Rin smiled. We just need to wait for a specific night that's coming in a few days so they don't absorb the wrong moon's light, and the evolution doesn't stray from the correct path. Taro looked at Ren for a long moment. The mushrooms in his hair glowed with a steady light, as if reflecting the certainty in his words. Could he believe this child with such terrible luck? Actually, his logic told him no, but subconsciously, Ren's overwhelming confidence gave him tiny hopes. You know what? Taro finally smiled. I hadn't started the mixture with the night essence anyway. I was waiting to have all the crystals to do it at once, so... He shrugged. I guess I lose nothing by doing it your way. 500 years of records won't change to give my beetle another option if the professor was so sure there wasn't. And if you're wrong about the amount when overcharging the crystal, the school will give me the potion for poisoning once. At least that support is universal. I'm telling you, you won't need any of that. Rin repeated and laughed at Taro's worried monologue. Yes, but if you're wrong, nothing will happen to me anyway. That's why I'm calm, and I'd still have time to collect the other 50 crystals to finish the common method, though we'll have to dig. They'll only give us one iron rank crystal daily, and it's not an earth attribute, though after using 100 for 100 days, I'm sure I'll already have another 50 just in case. Ha, you talk and worry too much. As they walked to their next class, Rin noticed something. By the way, why didn't you collect rain crystals? They're cheaper, but you could have exchanged them. I had 500 before coming. I even got 15 in the last few weeks, thanks to the rains. In the city? Taro laughed without humor. It's almost impossible to find them here. Besides, my beetle needs earth crystals, which are much more expensive. Plant users are lucky they can use that basic and super cheap crystal in their first rank. Rin nodded, thoughtful. He would also need earth crystals for his evolution, though of a higher rank than Taro's. As they walked toward combat class, Ren and Taro met Min in the hallway. Did you hear? Min smiled, his water snake undulating around his neck. Professor Yang has a stone behemoth. A behemoth? There are only 3 in the whole city. Ren, Min, and Taro had reached the end of the hallway. To the next class. The combat classroom was different from the others. A circular amphitheater with an arena in the center, surrounded by ascending stands. The walls were marked with scars from past battles. Silence. Professor Yang's voice thundered in the amphitheater. He was a tall, muscular man, with scars that spoke of years of real experience. The stone behemoth in Professor Yang's skin gleamed under the amphitheater lights. The rocky lines covering his muscles made him look carved from living granite, a perfect manifestation for a combat instructor. Welcome to the real reason the government has you in school. Professor Yang smiled. Though before we begin with the important stuff, Yang approached the board. I see in your faces that no one has explained how this school really works. Typical of old way. Since my colleague was probably too busy with theories to explain the basics to you, Let me simplify your 5 teaching units. He drew 5 circles on the board. The Academy divides its teaching into 5 units. Each is worth 1 point, and you need at least 3 to maintain your support here. Losing 3 points 3 times in a row means you're a failure not worth cultivating. He pointed to the first circle. First, basic knowledge. History, economics, and life. 3 boring but necessary subjects. Without them, you wouldn't even know how to pay your taxes. Several students laughed. Passing all 3 counts as 1 unit. Several students were taking notes frantically. He pointed to the second section. Then there's Professor Way's theoretical classes. Cultivation and crystal processing. Another unit. Yes, they're important, he rolled his eyes. But theory alone won't keep you alive. His tone suggested he considered this barely more useful than the basic classes. The third unit is exterior gathering, where you'll learn something useful. They'll teach you to survive while searching for cultivation materials. 2 weeks every 2 months, we'll go to designated zones. You'll learn to identify materials, detect monsters, and most importantly, when to fight and when to flee. The mushrooms in Ren's hair glowed with interest as Yang continued. 4th unit, practical crystals. Not endless theories, but real identification and gathering in the caves. Also a respectable unit. You'll learn to distinguish qualities, purity, and most importantly, not to poison yourselves too often by exposing yourself too much to concentrated mana. He straightened. And finally, combat. My specialty is battle against monsters. A young woman entered the classroom, her light step contrasting with Yang's imposing presence. My assistant, Professor Lin, is expert in combat against other tamers. His eyes swept the class. And do you know why this is the most important unit? Because no matter how much theory you memorize, how many crystals you identify, or how many materials you collect, if you can't defend yourself, all that knowledge will die with you. The rock in his skin crackled, as if emphasizing his words. Outside, monsters won't wait for you to process your crystals correctly. And in the rival city, some humans can be just as dangerous. Rin sank a bit in his seat. With only a 10% increase in strength, this unit would be a brutal unit. This class, his voice was rough as a stone covering him, will determine your baseline. He walked to the center of the arena. The final exam is simple. You'll have to eliminate a real monster. Not one of those weak ones that prowl near the city, but a genuine beast from the outer zones. Murmurs filled the amphitheater. That's why I need to know where you stand. Professor Lin and I will design a specific training program for each of you based on your performance today. Professor Lin began unrolling a scroll. We'll pair you according to your beasts and attributes. The goal is to show your current capabilities. Yang nodded. Some of you have strength increases, others speed. Some have beasts with special abilities. But now, before cultivating them is when your individualities as people can matter more than your beasts. We want to see how you use them, how you think in combat. Ah, and one more thing, Yang smiled. In my class, theory is learned through bruises. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed nervously. His 10% increase in strength seemed insignificant compared to his classmates' beasts, even in the early stages. First pair, Lin read from the scroll. Jean and the tiger boy straightened, his eyes fixed on Run, waiting for his opportunity. Chapter 23, Taming Battle 2. The tiger boy straightened, his eyes fixed on Run, waiting for his opportunity, like a predator spotting wounded prey. Taro. Rin could see the disappointment flash across Jin's face. The tiger boy had been hoping for a different prey. However, as he watched both students descend to the arena, the mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed softly, revealing the patterns of both beasts with startling clarity. Knowledge flowed through his mind like a crystal-clear stream. The spirit tiger versus the digger beetle. It would be an interesting combination for Ron to study. Each beast's strengths and weaknesses became apparent to him, like reading an intricate map of their capabilities. The digger beetle has a natural ability, Rin thought, the information unfolding in his mind. Earth Shield, a mana layer that reinforces the exoskeleton using earth energy. And the tiger, its spirit claws follow a pattern of 5 strikes before needing to recharge energy. The knowledge felt both foreign and familiar, like remembering something he'd always known but never realized. Enter the circle, Yang ordered, his voice echoing in the amphitheater. "Show us what you can do." Taro descended nervously into the arena, his digger beetle fusing with him and manifesting as a brown exoskeleton that covered his skin like living armor. Jean followed with a predatory smile, tiger markings becoming more pronounced on his face, his movements fluid and confident. "Begin." Jean attacked immediately, his movements flowing like water. Taro instinctively activated his earth shield, his exoskeleton glowing with a deep brown hue. Jin's fist, enhanced by the spirit tiger's 30% strength bonus, hammered against Taro's exoskeleton. The impacts resonated through the amphitheater like war drums, but barely left marks on the beetle's defense. "Not bad." Jean smiled, backing away with predatory grace. "But how about this?" His eyes blazed with golden light as the spirit tiger manifested its fangs, covering Jin's fists with ethereal energy that seemed to bend the very air around them. "Spiritual Fang," Rin murmured, recognizing the tiger's basic technique, seeing the intricate patterns of mana that made it possible. The next blow partially penetrated Taro's defenses, drawing a cry of pain that echoed in the arena. The spiritual energy had found a weakness in the physical armor, exploiting it with cruel efficiency. "What's wrong, cockroach?" "Only know how to hide." The exoskeleton had held, but the spirit energy had penetrated like water through stone. Each new blow seemed to find another crack in the seemingly impervious defense. "Counterattack," Yang shouted from the sidelines, his voice carrying an annoyed tone. "The best defense is worthless if you never strike back." But Taro only retreated, protecting himself with his arms in an increasingly desperate defense. Each new spiritual Fang found a different weak point in his armor, like a predator testing its prey's defenses. "The problem isn't the defense," Rin observed, seeing the pattern with perfect clarity. "It's that Taro isn't using the shield's rebound to counterattack. Each time he absorbs a blow, he could, after the fifth spirit strike, Jean had to pull back momentarily to recharge. It was just an instant, but Rin saw the opportunity Taro was missing, a perfect moment for a counterattack that never came. The fight continued with the same pattern until the earth shield finally gave way before a last spiritual Fang, cracking like ancient pottery under too much pressure. "Pathetic." Jean taunted between blows, his confidence growing with each successful strike. "Is this the level of the rotting boy's friends? I guess trash attracts trash." The fight ended shortly after, with Taro on the ground and Jean barely winded, his tiger markings still glowing with unused power. "Enough," Yang declared, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "Jean, good attack rhythm, though you need to manage your spirit energy better. Taro, your earth shield is solid, but you wasted every counterattack opportunity. Perfect defense is useless if you don't learn to turn it into offense. In a real fight, passivity will kill you. A win is a win." Jean smiled as he climbed the stands, satisfaction radiating from every movement. As he passed by Run, he added in a low voice, "Tell your friend to find better company next time, though I guess cockroaches understand each other. But practicing with a rotting boy will only make him weaker." Rin clenched his fists, the mushrooms in his hair pulsing softly. He could see clearly now the spirit tiger's attack patterns, its limitations, its weak points. But that knowledge would have to wait for a different time to be used. The matches continued, each pair showcasing different styles and abilities. Min used his water snake with surprising creativity, though he lost to a boy with an earth bear. "Run!" Lin finally called, though she winced at the pairing she read. Rin stood up, acutely aware of every eye in the amphitheater turning to him. Against Kai, the boy with green scales smiled predatorily, his scales gleaming under the lights as he stood. It was the same one who had tripped him earlier, his confidence evident in every movement. The rotting boy against Kai? Jean laughed from his seat, voice dripping with mockery. "What a waste. I could have crushed him faster." "On the contrary," interrupted Cass, the eagle girl, her eyes sharp with interest. "Kai's stone scales are perfect for this. I want to see how the rotting one handles an opponent practically immune to his level of strength." Ren swallowed hard. The stone scales granted natural protection. His blows, even with the 10% increase, would barely be mosquito bites against such defense. As he descended toward the arena, the mushrooms in his hair pulsed with knowledge. The scales had a specific pattern, zones where protection was weaker, but even so... Scared, rotting boy? Kai flexed his arms covered in green scales, each one catching the light like polished jade. You should be... This wouldn't be a normal fight. It would be a demonstration of just how useless the weakest beast really was against a proper defense. Or at least, that's what everyone expected to see. Whispers about the unfairness and how easy it would be for Kai began to circulate through the stands. It's not fair, someone complained through laughter. It won't even be fun to watch. What did you expect? Someone murmured. With that pathetic 10% increase. His mushrooms could glow brighter, suggested another, prompting more laughter. The pairings were random, Lin announced firmly. So I don't want to hear anyone complaining about favoritism. Professor Yang nodded, the stone lines in his skin gleaming, though with some, his gaze lingered on Run. It doesn't really matter who they fight. The laughter was immediate and cruel. Finish him quickly, Kai. Jean shouted from the stands, so we can move on to the real fights. Yang watched with bored indifference. It was obvious he considered this a waste of time. What could the weakest beast do against stone scales? And he knew a lot about stone defense. Lin, on the other hand, seemed a bit more interested. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed as he analyzed Kai's scales, seeking any pattern, any weakness he could exploit. Begin, Yang ordered. Chapter 24, Taming Battle, Part 3. Begin, Yang ordered. Kai launched forward, confident. Why wouldn't he be? His stone lizard scales not only increased his resistance and protected him, but his beast also enhanced his other attributes, including strength by 20%. Rin dodged the first blow, but not through skill. Despite Kai being faster, knowledge showed him how the scales limited certain movements. Kai couldn't raise his right arm beyond a certain angle without exposing a weak point between his ribs. Stop running, rotting boy. The scales on your right arm, Rin spoke, while backing away. Doesn't it bother you how they limit your movement? Kai stopped for a fraction of a second, surprised. That moment of doubt cost him. His next blow was slower, more self-conscious. Shut up. It's because of the growth pattern, Rin continued, dodging another blow. Scales from other beasts follow the natural muscle line. But in your case, I said, shut up. Kai attacked with more force, but now his movements were less fluid. The doubt had been planted. He was thinking about his own scales, about the small rigidities he had always ignored. The mushrooms glowed more intensely. The knowledge showed more. How the green scales indicated a minor deviation in cultivation, how this affected their distribution. Your scales should be almost blue. Rin dodged another blow. The green means they absorb too much earth mana. That's why they're denser on your right side. You know nothing. Kai roared, but his voice betrayed uncertainty. In the stands, silence had replaced laughter. Even Yang was watching more intently. Excess earth mana makes the scales grow irregularly, Rin continued while moving. It's subtle, but your right side is heavier. That's why you always turn left when you attack. The next time Kai attacked, everyone could see it. The slight imbalances turn, the way he unconsciously compensated for the extra weight on his right side. Shut up. Rage made Kai commit the mistake Rin was waiting for. He lunged forward with all his might, turning left as he always did. Rin didn't dodge this time. At the last moment, when Kai was fully committed to his attack, Rin stepped forward. His hands found Kai's arm at the exact angle where the scales couldn't protect the joint. A precise pull using Kai's own weight. The scale boy fell heavily to the ground. Impossible. Jean rose from his seat. How could the rotting boy? The whispers and laughter that had accompanied the fight's beginning had transformed into tense silence. No one expected the mushroom boy to even touch Kai, much less throw him down. Humiliation was reflected in the faces of those who moments before had been mocking him, especially in Jin's group. Kai rose slowly, his green scales gleaming with a threatening glow. The amusement had vanished from his face, replaced by cold fury. One thing was playing with the rotting boy, but being thrown down by him in front of the whole class. The atmosphere in the amphitheater had changed. It was no longer a comic spectacle. Now there was real tension. Even Professor Yang had leaned forward in his seat, his expression of boredom replaced by genuine interest. Lin and Luna showing even more interest. The way Kai clenched his fists, how the scales on his neck bristled. Everyone could see the game was over. The rotting boy had made the mistake of humiliating him, and now he would pay for it. Damn you. Kai stood up, his scales glowing more intensely. Speed mode. The scales on his legs changed pattern, channeling more mana. Suddenly, Kai was 50% faster. The next minute was a nightmare for Run. Kai's first blow was brutal. Rin could barely raise his arms to block, and even then the impact made him stumble back several steps. Is that all? Kai smiled, advancing. The great beast expert can't even stay standing. Try and dodge the next blow was useless. Kai was now much faster. The scales on his legs gleamed as he moved, and this time the impact connected directly with Ren's stomach. The air left his lungs. The mushrooms in his hair flickered erratically as he fell to his knees. Get up, rotting boy. Jean shouted from the stands. The fun's just starting. Ren stood up slowly, knowledge flowing through the pain. Another blow caught him, this time in the shoulder. Kai was relentless. Each impact resonated in his bones, each blow finding a new point of pain. Stop the fight, Taro shouted. He'll kill him. But the mushrooms in Ren's hair glowed more intensely with each blow. The knowledge flowed faster now. Speed mode diverted mana to the legs, leaving other points exposed. Yang stepped forward. This is enough. Wait. Lin stopped him, her eyes fixed on Run. Your scales, Rin spat a bit of blood and saliva, are absorbing the wrong type of mana. Learn to shut up, damn it. That's why speed mode destabilizes you. Kai stopped for an instant, his green scales glowing erratically. The scales should be blue, Rin continued, barely staying on his feet. The faster you move. Please shut up, or... Kai lunged forward with all his enhanced speed, his scales gleaming like a green star. Run, Taro shouted. But again, Rin didn't dodge. At the last second, Rin stepped to the left. His fist, guided by precise knowledge, found the exact point where the mana lines crossed incorrectly. It wasn't a powerful blow. The 10% increase barely made him stronger than a normal child. But it didn't need to be. Kai's scales, overcharged with the wrong mana and strained to the maximum by speed mode, resonated with the impact. The energy pattern, already unstable, collapsed. All the green scales went dark at once. Kai fell to the ground, gasping. His scales, now matte and lusterless, looked like mere patches on his skin. The silence in the amphitheater was absolute. Impossible! Yang stepped forward. Stone scales with simple speed mode. Rin staggered, barely conscious. Forces too much mana to the wrong pattern. One hit in the precise point, and he couldn't finish. His knees gave way and the world went black. The last thing he heard was Professor Yang's voice. Take Patender to the infirmary. Chapter 25, Taming Lin. Rin woke up in the infirmary. The pain in his body reminded him of each of Kai's blows. The mushrooms in his hair glowed erratically. Finally awake, Professor Lin was sitting beside his bed, a mischievous smile on her lips as she sipped tea. You know, it's the first time I've seen someone win a fight while looking so adorably pathetic, she laughed, her eyes sparkling with amusement. Your form is terrible, darling. Your endurance, she clicked her tongue. Well, let's say any novice with any other beast with more stamina, and your technique, she shook her head, practically non-existent. Rin tried to sit up, every muscle protesting. Ah! Lin gently pushed him back to the bed. Boys who let themselves be used as training dummies need to rest a bit while listening. I didn't let... No! She arched an eyebrow, amused. Oh, sorry. I suppose your face and body heroically stopped all those blows on purpose. Despite the pain, Rin couldn't help blushing. But Lin leaned forward, her smile becoming softer. Your combat reading was fascinating. The way you analyzed Kai's scales, how you found the weak point in his mana pattern. That was extraordinary. Why are you here, Professor? Can't I visit my new favorite student? You're what? I want to train you personally. Ren blinked. Sure, he had heard wrong. Train me? But he looked at the mushrooms in his hair, reflected in the window. I have the weakest beast. Even if I improve my technique, my limit is... And Lynn smiled, but there was something bitter in her expression. Let me show you something. Lynn rolled up her sleeve with a theatrical flourish. Look at this. On her arm, white and red feathers gleamed under the light. A swift crane manifested in her skin, its wings forming elegant patterns that ran up to her shoulder. A swift crane, Ren observed, the mushrooms in his hair pulsing with knowledge. But the feather pattern, Lynn traced the feathers with a finger. Most cranes can reach silver easily. They're creatures naturally gifted for cultivation, with a clear path to higher ranks. She sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes lost in the feather patterns. Mine was especially promising thanks to my family's resources. The professor said it had potential for silver too, maybe even, well, pretty impressive, right? Or it was until this fool, she pointed to herself, ruined her cultivation through impatience. The mushrooms in Ren's hair pulsed as he analyzed. The pattern clearly showed where the cultivation had deviated. Now it's permanently at bronze 1 having reached maturity. Lynn continued, pinching Ren's cheek. So, let's say I have a weakness for special cases. Why me? Because she leaned in so close their noses almost touched. I saw a little genius today. Sure, a genius who desperately needs physical training, but she winked. That can be fixed. Ren saw a flash of pity in her eyes, though she hid it well behind her playful attitude. And she was right. Even mature beast, ruin at bronze 1, was infinitely superior to his spore, at least in others' perception, since he knew the truth. However, Ren could certainly use some extra training. So, what do you say? Lynn ruffled his hair, making the mushrooms glow. Will you let this ruined assistant professor train the weakest student? The mushrooms glowed as Ren considered her offer. The knowledge showed him that Lynn's swift crane could have been extraordinary, and that it wasn't completely lost yet. I accept, he said finally. But... Lynn tilted her head. Curious. Someday. Ren looked at the feathers on her arm. I'd like to talk to you about your crane's cultivation. Lynn blinked, surprised, before letting out a crystalline laugh. How daring! She pinched both his cheeks this time. The little expert wants to fix my cultivation? One thing at a time, darling. First. Her smile turned mischievous. Let's see if he can last more than 2 minutes in a real fight. The teacher stood up. Well, enough rest. Lynn pulled a small green pill from her pocket. Take this. It will help with the pain and speed up your recovery. Ren swallowed the pill, feeling a pleasant warmth spread through his body. The pain didn't disappear completely, but it became more manageable. Now, to class. Lynn helped him up. You have practical economics after battle class, and you can't afford to miss it. With your special condition, you need to excel in all theoretical units if you want to maintain your support. Ren nodded, understanding where the advice came from. Lynn believed that with his spore, he would need every point he could get. I'll see you after classes. Lynn smiled as she gently pushed him toward the door. And this time, try not to provoke anyone who might break your bones before you heal, okay? The mushrooms in his hair pulsed softly as Ren headed to his next class. The lingering pain reminded him that, despite his victory, he still had a long way to go. Ren arrived limping to the economics classroom. Professor May was already in the middle of her explanation. That's why understanding crystal economy cycles is crucial, she was saying while drawing graphs on the board. The value fluctuates according to the season. Rain crystals, for example, are cheaper during the wet season. Taro waved to him from his seat, pointing to an empty space beside him. Smart merchants, May continued, buy when prices are low in store, but they must consider storage costs and degradation risk. Mr. Pattender, May stopped, her voice sharp. Is punctuality not important for her? Professor, Luna interrupted from her seat, her voice cold and precise.